Okay, well, thank you all very much for being with us again for our next speaker. And as I said earlier, we're recording these separately, so I'm going to say once again, welcome to our bicentennial event. And as the School of Medicine and Health Sciences starts its third century of creating healthcare providers, including physicians for 200 years, PAs for 52, and many others, doctors of physical therapy, occupational therapy, biological sciences, PhD, master's, BS, all of them we've been creating for 200 years. It's really very exciting, and we are very proud of our school and, of course, very proud of our faculty who deliver all those fine products to our public. Once again, I am Barbara Bass. I'm the Vice President for Health Affairs and the Dean of the School of Medicine and Health Sciences, and I've had that great privilege to hold that position for the last 5 years. And this is the final talk of our Bicentennial Symposium. And I really want to thank those earlier speakers, Dr. Ackman, Dr. G. What great, interesting, and fun talks we've had. I want to take just a few minutes to introduce our final speaker, who is Dr. Lorenzo Norris. I hope that you'll have a chance to see a little bit more of him later tonight at our bicentennial events as they kick off as well. Dr. Norris is currently an associate professor of psychiatry and behavioral health. He joined GW in 2006. And while he's been with us, he has contributed in an incredible number of ways. In addition to being an outstanding clinician, did a lot with our with our hospital-based consultation and emergency psychiatric care groups, as well as a physician. But over the years, he's taken on increasing leadership roles within the School of Medicine and Health Sciences in supporting our healthcare workforce on a grander scale. Primarily with the leadership of the program, the Office of Resiliency and of Wellness and of Office of Resiliency and Wellness, which was established in the throes of the COVID pandemic. Like many places during that time, there was a lot of suffering going on in our healthcare workforce, our physicians, our residents, our students. It was, I think many of you will recall, it was a pretty scary time. And that was manifest in a lot of ways for our community. And it was very clear that we needed a very effective leader and a very targeted intervention to create programs that would alleviate, I'm going to say that, suffering and provide very needed support to our healthcare workforce across the board, that whole spectrum of people, including, of course, the staff that were there with us every day working. So Dr. Norris was the lead in setting up that very important program, which has blossomed over the last 4 years since into a program that has served the university as well as all aspects of our healthcare enterprise in providing wellness services, but also acute intervention services for those that need professional support. Dr. Norris is a highly recognized academic psychiatrist. He's published widely, again, with a focus on primarily brief psychotherapy modalities is kind of his specialty, that intervention that is critically necessary. One of the exciting things he's also done over the last 4 or 5 years is become very involved with our students as one of our student advising deans, and now has risen to the incoming role of being our senior associate dean for MD programs. That's the person that oversees all of our different MD programs, which he will step into that on an interim basis in January of this year as Professor Rich Simons, who some of you may remember, who's led those programs for us for about a decade now, will be moving on to retirement. But I'm really pleased that Dr. Norris has become such a vital player in our Dean's Suite, leading our educational programs, as well as supporting our Office of Resiliency and Wellbeing. So with that, Dr. Norris, may I ask you to come up here and talk to us about hope and humanism?
Dean Bass, thank you for that gracious introduction. And I'm really just so pleased to be here. And I'm not going to keep everybody too long because I know there are festivities awaiting at the Fairmount Hotel, and hopefully I'll be able to join those. And again, this is the Frank Miller lecture. So in addition to these learning objectives here, I'm going to try to just talk to you all a little bit about somewhat of the journey that I myself have been through, and what I myself, as well as Dr. Lee Frame, who co-founded the Resiliency and Wellbeing Center with me, have been through in terms of our journey, trying to interweave that and hopefully touch upon themes that are relevant here to all of us right now in this day and age. And I also, I'm going to make an attempt to embody the spirit of Dr. Dean Frank Miller, who, for those of you who know, who we lost in 2013, but whose impact in presence is still absolutely felt to this day. And we were very fortunate to have his daughter, Miss Catherine Slaughter, here with us. And I just wanted everybody to give Catherine a round of applause. All right, so with that being said, all right. Okay, there we go. When I had the opportunity to prepare for this lecture, and I thought about Dr. Miller, and whoa, GW double alumnus, dean of student affairs as well as curriculum, from I want to say 66 to 73, chair of the Department of Pathology, the first Golden Apple winner. Wow, I mean, like, he won the Golden Apple. He was the first person. And now I'm like, wow, Barbara, you really, really wanted me to give this lecture? Okay. But when I read about Dr. Miller, one of the things that I thought about, and this is a quote from Dr. Maya Angelou, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And when I thought about that, reading about Dr. Miller, and one of the things that struck me was just how people talked about how he made them feel, the connection, the energy. And with that being said, I'll tell you just a little bit of the story of how I came to GW, just a small snippet. I want you to get to know a little bit of me. So I'm originally born and bred Cleveland, Ohio. All right, go Cavs. That's right, we're undefeated. Yes, we are. And if there's anybody from New York, I am not sad. I'm quite happy that we are beating you. So with that being said, though, I was actually doing my fellowship up at Yale, New Haven. And Dr. Catherine, I contacted some folks because I wanted to go into consult liaison psychiatry. And Catherine Crone said, she was at Inova Fairfax, my mentor, said, we don't have any positions. Actually, it was Tom Weiss, but GW might have some positions. And I said, oh, GW, great. So I call up GW, and no positions. I'm like, oh gosh, okay. So I interview at Howard. Howard makes me an offer. I'm like, well, I like DC. We want to be there. So I'm like, okay, I'll definitely consider it. I mean, certainly, and I was ready to sign the contract. And then you have to envision this, because in my mind, this is what it was. I don't actually know if this is what Jeff was eating, but he called me at noon on a Tuesday, eating a ham sandwich. I can't tell you why it was a ham sandwich, but in my mind, it was a ham sandwich. Like, hey, Lorenzo. I'm like, whoa, this is what, Dr. Ackman? Like, sure, yeah, absolutely. Would you like to come down to GW? And I mean, he was chewing because he was eating during lunch. I mean, literally, like, would you like to come down to GW and like interview with us? Would I want to come to GW and interview? Hell yeah, I want to come to GW and interview, absolutely. So at that point in time, he's like, look, I'll set you up. And of course, Jeff set me up in the Cosmos Club and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm like, whoa, this is different. All right, this is amazing. But what was more amazing were the people that I met. I remember meeting Julia Frank, who I'll talk a little bit about later. And Julia, if any of you know her, super duper connected, lots of energy. In the interview, she literally jumped on a chair and was reaching for something. And I was like, is this a test of the interview? I mean, do I have to catch a faculty member as they're about to fall? I mean, seriously, I was like spotting. I'm like, whoa, you are. But she was so energetic. And then I met Griff, who is with us today. And I'm so pleased for Griff and his mentorship. And Griff, if any of you know, very calm, very spiritual. I can't get the Mississippi twang the way that I want, but just that, hi, Lorenzo, how are you? I'm like, oh, this is nice. And then you all know Jeff Ackman, very smooth. Hi, Lorenzo. Welcome to GW. I'm like, oh, yeah, I like this. So going back to the quote, I can't tell you what Griff was wearing. I can't tell you what Julia was wearing. I can't even tell you half the time where I was. I remember how the department in GW made me feel. I felt like, wow, these people care. They're connected. They're small, but they're strong. Sign me up. And then Dr. Bill Lawson called, he's a good buddy now. He said a couple of weeks later, and he said, what happened? I was like, they acted and y'all didn't. Hope in action, there you have it. And so with that being said, let me just move forward. Now, why do we need hope? Why do we need hope in this day and age, all right? One of the reasons, and I'm going to try to make a case for hope as well as humanism in this. All right, we need hope because we need to face great societal challenges. There are many, whether they are social justice, whether there is climate change, you name it. One of the things that every university, every system of higher education in the world is, how do we address these societal challenges? Because intrinsically, they are difficult, they are complex, they need solutions, and they need multifaceted solutions. Hope as action, which I'm going to continue to kind of reinforce here, as well as being connected, are necessary for this. And when I talk about hope as action, I'm talking about agency with goals and multiple pathways to get there. In order to address societal challenges like climate change, as an example, you need hope in humanism. Next, don't worry, I know, I'm not going to go into politics here. All right, so everyone, take a deep breath with me. I had more media requests this week than I had in a year. True story. Like, what are we going to do with stress? I need you to breathe. Everybody, I did abdominal breathing on NBC with people. I'm like, okay, everybody with me now. All right. We have polarization. All right. We have polarization. I'm using this slide for politics, but it could apply to any number of things. So polarization, the middle is evaporating. And then what that slide there shows, the top part of it where you see like the kind of close clusters, the blue, that's how Democrats feel about Democrats and Republicans feel about Republicans. That's great. All right, at the bottom, it's like how Democrats feel about Republicans and how Republicans feel about each other, about Democrats. You can see there's a bit of a chasm there. All right, you don't have to be a statistician. So, okay, we've got some challenges here ahead of us. Next, though, again, for the case of hope. Yes, I'm a father. 18-year-old, 15-year-old daughters, Taylor and Sydney. And I would dare say one of the most common requests that I get with the Resiliency and Wellbeing Center, we get a lot. Number one thing, mental health services for my kids. By far, you want to know what number two is? You probably can guess it, elder care. I've got a proposal already for Barbara that if we have our own child, in-house child and adolescent psychiatric focus, people will come and stay forever. I guarantee it. No, seriously, I guarantee it. The mental health of our youth has been declining. We have increases in suicide. We have increases in loneliness. We have increases in despair. All of these things are occurring, and that is why the Surgeon General has sent now at this point in time multiple warnings. Again, a case for hope, action, humanism, how we connect in an authentic way. Then finally, two of the biggest, they're not the only things that I feel though that are challenges for all of us moving forward, is loneliness, as well as this term VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. We went into COVID, but a lot of us, we didn't go in really how we really wanted to. Remember, we still had an opiate epidemic, diseases of despair, we had all kinds of stuff. And then you go into COVID and you go into isolation, you don't see each other, and then you come back out. And do you remember what those conversations were like when you first came out of COVID with folks? I mean, yeah, you should. Yeah, I remember. I mean, you're like, oh yeah, you're 3D. I mean, you literally almost like, you didn't know how to react. You're like, oh, whoa. I mean, you're like, you have size and dimensions. I mean, we had to those a bit like, whoa, you're tall, you're shorter. You're like, seriously. And it took us a minute. People forgot how to socialize in person. I'm serious, I had consults on this. Y'all are laughing, but yeah, I see, thank you for sharing. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, literally someone did that to me once, like, yeah, I'm real, there it is, don't worry about it, yes. So all of these things, but we went in and we didn't come out completely right. We're still processing it. Many of you missed many events. My daughter started high school online. Yeah. The first year, all of it gone. I lost both of my grandparents in COVID. Many people have lost folks. Absolutely. There were things that, and here's the thing, you're not going to get that back. I don't get to go back in time like a Marvel movie and get it back. That happened, and we're still dealing with that right now. So again, my focus and my case for hope and humanism. All right, and now, hope is action, and we need to move beyond wishing. We need to move beyond optimism. All right, we need to move into hope as action. Now, why hope as action? Well, this gets a little bit again into my journey. The Swiss Army knife of hope, because I am a proud member of the GW Department of Psychiatry, which you might as well call us the Department of Hope, all right, because that is what we do. The legacy of it starts with Jerome Frank, all right, Julia Frank's father, who I did not know at that time, who actually wrote Persuasion and Healing, who talked about the common elements of psychotherapy. There's a CBT, there's a DBT, there's a X, Y, or Z. Really what it comes down to is warmth, connection, and your ability to meet the person where they're at. Then we are very fortunate in that we had Julia Frank, his daughter, in our department, who actually wrote the book Psychotherapy of Hope. And if any of you have met Julia Frank, you know that she is a force to be reckoned with, to say the least. And she personifies it. But then the person who is one of my personal mentors, who's in the audience right now, is Dr. James Griffith, all right, who has taken hope. He's written his own books in regards to hope. And he is a developer of the hope modules. All right, this is the psychotherapeutic modalities that we actually use in the Resiliency and Wellbeing Center in our Caring for the Caregiver programs. So in our department, I mean, I came in, I was swimming in hope. I was like just hope, 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 hope. It was to the point, you know when Obama came out with the audacity of hope, I thought he took it from our department. I was serious. I was like, did somebody copyright that? Did somebody forget to send the email? There's no way that he came up with that. I mean, I was actually quite serious. I'm like, what, audacity of hope? Didn't Griff say that in a lecture already? I mean, Griff, you should talk to him or something. So our department is immersed in hope. This is what we do, but not hope as a wish or an optimism. Hope as action. Okay, now a little bit about hope theory. This is Dr. Rick Snyder. He's unfortunately no longer with us, but this was a prominent psychologist who really laid a lot of the work in regards, as well as many others. And I'm giving you one theory of hope. There are many. I am simplifying it, all right? I'm simplifying it in a way in which this is the most commonly cited, if you will, theory of hope with the different scales, and also it's the one that most closely correlates with the work that Griff in our department has done. All right, but Dr. Rick Snyder came up with this hope theory. And again, the key thing is it has goals, mental targets that guide actions that can be verbal or visual, pathways, finding different ways to achieve goals, and agency, believing that you can make change happen. Agency is the engine. That's the engine of hope. Goals, if you will, in terms of what are targets, that kind of can start to relate a little bit to optimism, and pathways. What are your different paths? Have any of you all ever tried to come into DC and there's traffic? I remember when I first got to DC and I would just get stuck because I only knew one way in. Just stuck, just like, oh, dude. And Griff and Jeff would be like, oh, ooh, Lorenzo, not looking so good, huh? You're going to need to work on how to get in here. There are multiple bridges and multiple paths to get in, all right? But so again, goals, pathways, and agency, it is applicable in any situation, including helping your children do homework. I've done this before many times or whatnot. Oh, Dad, I'm X, Y, or Z. I need you to visualize the goal of the homework with me, okay? And we have visualize with me. Visualize, visualize, visualize. Okay, imagine the homework getting done. Okay, we have multiple pathways to do it. You can do it in the living room. You can do it, all right, in the basement. You can do it in your room. Heck, you can even do it in the office with Dad while he catches up on his EMR work. But we need to go together and think about the different pathways in terms of doing this. So you can use hope in many different things, and that's why it's a Swiss Army knife. Now, this is the formal, if you will, version of hope as action, all right? Pathways fought, developmental lessons of correlation. Agency fought, development lessons as self as offer, all right? And again, the pathways. Hope is not, okay, I see things as positive. Hope is not, oh gosh, I mean, wouldn't it be great if this happens? I hope that whatever genie or whatnot comes from the sky and does 3 wishes. That's not hope. Not the way we define it, not the way we think about it, not the way the brain works with it. Hope is action, all right? Action also in the face of adversity, Hope isn't easy. And we're going to get that in a few when we talk about Dr. Miller a little bit more. Hope isn't easy. That's the thing, another thing, because we're called the Resiliency and Well-Being Center. Everybody wants resilience, but they don't want to go through the adversity. All right, yeah, that's the rub. Like, yes, I want to be resilient. And I'm like, okay, do you want to go through adversity? They're like, oh, maybe not so much. I'm like, well, that's kind of how you get to the other side of resilience. You can't have one without the other. But hope particularly, when we talk about hope theory, in the setting of adversity. Now, I'm going to give you a super duper, super fast, rapidly abbreviated, talk to Griff if you want more, lesson on hope modules that you can apply. Literally, it's a brief psychotherapy, literally, or a brief, if you will, modality. There were 2 questions. You're facing adversity, which I know everybody is in some way. First question, how did this affect you? And then the next question, how did you respond? Those are the 2 questions. That's how all of our treatment is based. Those 2 questions as a start. The first question, okay, if you will, is going to start to get at what happened. It's going to engage, if you're a therapist or someone, it's going to engage your empathy circuits with the person because they're going to feel heard and they're going to feel experienced, okay? And then the next, how did you respond, is going to elicit what? Your story of resilience. How did you respond to this or in the past? Your story and your words are more powerful than any data, anything that I can tell you. That's why one of the things in psychiatry, it's just like Vegas. I just want to get you talking about your own story. And then we're going to win with us. We're going, if we can get you talking about your story. Once you do that, then you can pick, this is not an exhaustive list, along the following 4 pathways, all right, in terms of how you're going to deal with the adversity. First, are you going to problem solve? Next, are you going to activate a core identity? Third, are you going to cope through your relationships? Social support. Okay, next, are you going to choose to emotionally regulate? Since it's medicine, everybody likes a mnemonic. The mnemonic, move with PACE, P-A-C-E. Problem solving, activate a core identity, coping, emotional regulation. That's it. Very simple, many different applications. If you want to hear more, we'll be there at 5:30. Griff is here. He'll talk to you quite a bit. Or better yet, buy his book. I mean, much better, all right? So support GW. So now, here's some of the things in regards to hope. Apologies in regards to that came out wrong. But some of the different things that we think about. What enables hope to happen? Again, I talked about the hope therapy, the agencies, the pathways, all right, and the goals. But also the key drivers are the trust, the agency, and the positive expectations. Why do I have this picture up? Okay, I'm real glad that CJ is here. What, 2014 CJ? All right, that's great. I mean, were you one of those students when I didn't know how to write a dean's letter? Like I tried to write a dean's letter without a computer? I hope that wasn't you. I don't remember. Okay. Well, that's good. That's great. That was a true story. That was a true story. Yes, Dean Goach, talk to CJ. Absolutely. He'll tell you some stuff. All right. So in regards to the key drivers of hope, trust, positive expectations, agency. This is now Dr. Jacob Sokolovich, all the way to the right. He was the class president of class of, I want to say, 2022. All right. Dean Goach is nodding her head, which is very good. Thank you, Dean Goach. I told you we came out of COVID. We hadn't connected with the students. They didn't know who we were. I mean, think about that. You're a student, and the only thing that you know is like you see this box of like, you know, this guy, Dean Norris, with some gray hair or whatnot, and that's what you knew, and that was your isolation. Jacob extended a hand of friendship and said, look, I will help you reconnect with the students. I will be a part of the team. I will magnify the message, and I will call you out and hold you accountable, Dean Norris, when you don't follow through. Yeah, he's GW, hell of a leader, isn't he? But it's in our culture. We owe Jacob and other student leaders a debt of gratitude. But again, the key driver you notice, as I put here, trust. I can't emphasize that enough. One of the most requested workshops that I personally have given is around team dynamics and trust, and how do you establish trust, all right? Because people, a willingness to speak, to be empathic, to be hopeful, you can't have that in regards unless you have trust. Now, oh, yeah, there we go. this is the differences, again, this is a more detailed definition in terms of the differences between hope and optimism. One of the main differences in terms of, if you look at the optimism definition by Siegelman or whatnot, is the agency and the perceived capacities, all right? Optimism is, I'm looking on the bright side. I definitely, like, maybe the cup is half full. I see that things can get better, but you're not involved in it. You are not an active participant in it, and you have not actually thought about the different pathways in which it can occur. It's very nice, but it is not very helpful, all right? And also it can result in blind optimism, which is naivete. And to be perfectly frank with you, I've told folks this, I'd rather deal with a pessimist than an optimist, all right? Because I have something to work with then. So, but the key thing here is optimism. Yes, you can have some positive attributions or ideas, but if you are not goal-centered, you do not have agency, that engine, that motivation, and you haven't thought about the pathways, it's not going to work. Again, take my example. I can be optimistic that when in any number of times when the university has different barriers to getting in, I can be optimistic that I'm going to get to work, but we all know that's not going to happen. I have to exert agency. I have to know the pathways. I have to work at it. So again, optimism is not, all right, hope. Hope is action. Next, this is just random little article I wrote for fun. Blind optimism only works in fantasy football. Time to get realistic. All right, one of the, actually, of the stuff that I've written, one of the ones I got the most like interest in, I was like, I just did it like MD Edge wanted me to do a blog. I'm like, fine, I'll do this. All right. So part of the focus of that article gets into this. The optimism continuum. Okay. You can have pessimism. All right. You can have blind optimism. Everything's going to work out no matter what. X, Y, or Z, all of these type of things. Pessimism, nothing is going to work. Realistic optimism. This can be realistic optimism as compared to just pure optimism, can be a component of hope. And what is realistic optimism? We notice the negative, but we don't stay engaged. Have you ever been in one of those situations where people just keep talking? I see some people nodding their heads. You know what it is? Like your mood just drops. I mean, it's just like negative, and you're almost in a negative spiral of doom, and you can't get out of it. You're staying engaged with the negative. You have to allow yourself to acknowledge the negative and then move past it, all right? If you don't acknowledge the negative, now you've got a problem because now we're getting into self-deception and denial. We don't do that. That's blind. Acknowledge it, but then disengage from it. Allow yourself to be realistic. In other words, don't spend an hour bemoaning or X, Y, or Z, any type of adversity. Give yourself time to process it, but then say, all right, what am I going to do next? What are my actions? Again, half full versus half empty, even though there's multiple glasses here. What I would say to you all, hope isn't about which one of these things is half full, half empty, or anything of that nature. Hope is what you choose to do with the water. I've got this much water, I've got this much resources, I've got this much of this. What do I choose to do with it, and how do I choose to act? All right, regardless of the situation. All right. This is just a nod, again, to hope in physical health. And when I speak about this, again, I told you our department has a history of hope. And we also have a history of being heavily involved in psychosomatic medicine. So one of the things where I first cut my teeth at GW was in psycho-oncology and working with Dr. Mandy Pratt Chapman. All right. I was fortunate enough to be the GW first cancer survivorship champion. And this is actually how this actually occurred. All right. Mandy and I were sitting in a random meeting. All right. And I think we were both just frustrated, just tired. And I don't even know what I said. I literally just threw up my hands. I'm like, I'm from Cleveland and I can't take this anymore. All right, so I'm just gonna start talking. I said literally, that's a true story. And then Mandy heard something in that whatever, that emotional, like I have to say or do something, said, great, we're gonna start a survivorship clinic. I'm like, what? I'm like, huh, we're gonna do what? Well, I was just talking, I'm from Cleveland, sometimes I talk. I mean, sometimes I get emotional, all right? So But she found that, and she said, look, we're going to make an attempt to start a survivorship clinic, which eventually turned into our childhood of cancer survivor clinic, which eventually turned into our adult survivor clinic, which is where we first started to pilot many of the modalities of brief psychotherapy, including Griff's HOPE modules. So a big shout out to Mandy Pratt Chapman in regards to that. And another thing that I remember in regards to starting that, I really started to delve deeply, not just because of psycho-oncology, a bit in terms of attributional styles. When you're not actually doing hope as practice, you make room for helplessness and hopelessness. You make room for helplessness and hopelessness. Your brain will fill the space. So we want to make sure that we are directing our brain on what to focus on. If you're not doing hope as practice, then helplessness and hopelessness can start to take sway, particularly if you're around everyone that is quite negative. These are just some of the studies looking at it in regards to learned helplessness theories of depression, all right, as well as, if you will, different things involving how hopelessness or helplessness can actually relate to and exacerbate depression. I'm in no way, shape, or form saying that clinical depression is due to somebody's attributional style or that it is caused by them thinking negatively. What I am saying, though, is that your attributional style, like anything else, can either help or hinder matters. That is what I'm getting at. So again, but if we're not doing hope as practice, we can get into this type of situation. All right. And again, this is just going back to what I said before. This is hope and mental health interventions. These are actually all GW students, except for Shelly, who was an attending back in the day. That's me. Oh my goodness, that's like much, much too young. Oh my goodness, do I even barely have hair? It's not even gray. Oh my goodness. You can see me back there behind Dr. Imageru. All right, so hope works. We do this in our clinics, and many of the therapies that you hear about, whether they're CBT, DBT, even our own hope therapy, which is actually specifically targeted as hope, they work to mobilize action. They work to mobilize hope. And of note, two of these folks, Dr. Darlinda Miner on the right and Dr. Jason Imageru on the left, all right, they are destroying me in fantasy football right now because we kept our fantasy football league going. All right, so it still is, and I am losing very badly. So, but nonetheless, the point wasn't for me to win in fantasy football. The point was for us to stay connected to our residents and our colleagues. So, now, resilience, the Big Ten. All right, this is taken from Southwick and Charney's book, all right? So again, we're talking about hope as action, and if you're doing things in terms of active, these are different things in terms of the actual activities that build resilience. We're gonna get to hope and connection in a second, but these are some of the things. In Southwick and Charney in this book, they interviewed people that had survived torture, folks that had survived natural disasters, folks, Navy SEALs, people who had generated great and significant hope, all right? And these are some of them. I highlighted some in green that I particularly like. Optimistic and realistic, accepted social support, role models and mentors. And again, you can pull this out anytime that you want. And I frequently use my family as an example because my youngest daughter, Sydney, she came to me and she didn't say dad, she's like, Father. You know, yeah, you know the tone, exactly. See, all that like, Father, I'm like, oh no. Oh no, she's got me right now. Either I did something wrong or she's got a special request for me. It's like, Father. I have done some work in terms of, I heard you talk about hope, because I talk about hope all the time. Father, yes, Sydney, I believe that through agency and action, you can get me Taylor Swift tickets. And I'm saying, I don't know. I am not that connected. Aren't they all sold out? Didn't she have to cancel the shows and then reissue the tickets? Yes, Father. But I've heard you talk about hope. Didn't you tell me, Dad? Agency, action, I visualized the homework. I need you to visualize the Taylor Swift tickets. Don't you hate it when they use that stuff against you? I'm like, punishment for being a psychiatric dad. So anyway, I'm sitting there and I'm trying to figure it out. And then there were some options available. And then I look at it and I'm just like, what? Because I'm from Cleveland and there's certain things you don't do. all right? And one of them is, no disrespect to anybody who did, I'm not going to pay half a semesters of college tuition just so you can hear T swizzle. I mean, I'm not wired that way. I mean, I wear winter coats in April or whatnot. I don't root for the Steelers or University of Michigan. I'm from Cleveland, so I'm not doing that. Let's watch it on Disney Plus. How about that? Father, I need you to consider other different paths. So I'm sitting there. I know she's hardcore. I mean, yeah, you know. So I'm sitting there. I'm like, oh, dude, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. All right. So in any event, she comes to me, and I don't know I'm like, I think this is it. I mean, she comes to me. She's like, Father, we got the tickets. I'm like, what? What do you mean? How did you get the tickets? I was like, what happened? What did you do? Did you figure out a different way? Did you use any of the meditations I gave you? Like, did you meditate? Did you listen to one of my podcasts? Did you read something? Did you read one of my articles? No, not at all. I was like, all right, maybe I'm trying to figure out what you could have possibly done to get the tickets. And she's like, Dad, we went to a higher source of hope. I'm like, a higher source of hope? What, did you go talk to Father Mel? Like, no. I'm like, what, did you go talk to your Uncle Ernest who works for Amazon? No, a much higher source of hope. Okay, I'm like, now I'm confused. I'm like, what, you didn't meditate, you didn't breathe, you didn't do anything of that nature. You went to a higher source of hope. I'm like, Sydney, what did you do? I asked Mom. So, in any true story, she did. I was like, so, higher source of hope. Health professional mothers, take a bow. So in any event, they ended up going to the Taylor Swift concert and not paying an arm and a leg for it. How she did it, I have absolutely no idea. But in any event, hope. My daughter did activate something, and I was very happy that she had her mother as a role model and a mentor to show you to not give up. So there you have it. Now, humanism as connection, reaffirming what we value. The most radical thing we can do is connect people to one another. That starts conversations towards a vision for change. Again, voice of leadership and hope. And I told you I was going to bring this back to Dr. Miller. All right. This, I think, personifies Dr. Miller and his work as a dean, as well as an educator, probably even more so than any other quote. This ability to connect with people. This ability to show them a vision, but where they are involved in it. This ability to connect is critical. Okay. Now, this is a slide I've been using since the start of the pandemic, all right, because I found it very useful because it usually relates to how people respond to crisis. Pre-disaster impact, honeymoon phase. Then there's disillusionment and reconstruction. It's easy for everyone to connect in the honeymoon phase. It's easy for everyone to be happy and like, oh, this is great, and hug it out and all this other kind of stuff. But what happens when you get to the disillusionment phase? What happens when the, if you will, the pandemic, the tragedy, the adversity doesn't stop, or you get another one on top of it? What do you do then? This is the opportunity really, not only for growth, but connection framed by a realistic approach. And my argument is that that should be hope. So, humanism and healthcare. I could have 10 hours on this. Or better yet, go listen to Dr. Raphael, she's in the audience or whatnot, who does our humanities. I'm using the definition here of humanism. I took it from the Gold Humanism Society, but in terms of compassion, respect, empathy, holistic care, and cultural sensitivity. I want to put an emphasis right now on empathy and connection. All right, empathy in terms of how we connect with others, how we understand their feelings, how we feel them, and how it is one of our natural things in terms of bonding with other people and working with them. But all of these things, as I'm referring to humanism, are a part of it, but I'm focusing on empathy. I bring this up in regards to social isolation because what I'm getting at in regards to empathy, our brains are literally wired to connect. That's why solitary confinement works as a form of torture. All right. If you isolate somebody, the same pain receptors will go off as if you hit them on a knee with a hammer. That is why when you isolate, you discriminate, if you will single people out, that's why it hurts. We are wired to connect. All right, that gets into, if you will, thinking about different theories of the brain. And this was just some evidence in regards on what happens when folks socially isolated. Okay, look at this. These are top concerns of GW community for 2020 and 2021. All right, again, at the height of COVID, anxiety regarding COVID exposure, stress of social isolation, various forms of occupational injury. Then when we went to 2022, things started to shift to what? Team dynamics. All right, My colleagues in distress, how can I help? Referrals for child and adolescent psychiatry. Appreciating and understanding different perspectives on mask mandates. Career and life questions. I had so many of those, I lose count. Everything started to focus, again, more on their connection with each other, with their lives, as well as with their family. Now, this is interesting. In terms of sources of meaning, this gets at it with connection. I pulled this out in where do different countries, if you will, where do they find meaning? Okay, as you can see, wow, we're, along with a lot of people, family. Okay, but that's first. Notice where occupation is for the US. It's fourth, which actually shocked me. Yeah, that was shock. Yeah, didn't that surprise you? I thought it was going to be number one. Yeah, I thought it would be number one or two. Yeah, it's a good sign when Dr. Nesbitt is like, whoa, I didn't appreciate that population health. She's like, whoa. Because normally she's like, yeah, I already knew that, Lorenzo. So you look at that and you're like, wait a minute, what's going on? And then, so family, friends. I guess in the UK, they like their hobbies more than their money, which I get. I guess, what, do they play tennis more or whatever? Okay. And then they got, the UK and US got occupation fourth? Wow, that's just weird. And then, to me at least, and then let me see what was another one here that because we were debating like our favorite, some of our favorite places to go. Dean Nesbitt gave me her like really great, I think it was like great spots in Italy, I'm not sure, or actually it was Paris. But in any event, I was looking at this and I was like, wow, they've got friends like really low in Italy. I'm like, maybe they just don't like, maybe they don't value friends that much. And then in France, where was France at? France has friends low too. I'm like, that's like interesting. But look at where family is at. Next. What is commonly cited as a source of meaning in your life? Work. All right, let's see, where does the US fall with that? I'm shocked. I'm like, Spain? Siesta country? They rate work higher than we do? That's not possible. We're Americans. We live to work, but maybe we don't. Maybe we don't. We're like on the lower end here, very low. We're below the England, Germany, we're below Germany. This is next. Many point to family and children as sources of meaning of life. Look at where we rank in the US. Did anybody here have the honor and privilege of attending our lecture on cancer yesterday? The story that Molly gave us was exquisitely powerful. A survivor of head and neck cancer, the first patient to have personalized vaccine therapy here at GW, ever, period, across the globe. She had to get treated twice. She was told she needed to get her affairs in order. She told us a story that had all of us in tears in terms of how she prepared to say goodbye to her son in writing letter after letter after letter after letter after letter of every milestone. And then I asked her afterwards, and I'm glad I didn't cry. That's something Dean Bass and I have in common, if you didn't know. All right. How did you find the strength? And I was talking with John about this. We were expecting a long answer. Just one word, my son. Just like that. Where do you find meaning? What's my point? Meaning in the connection. And not necessarily just the connection to GW, but the connection to each other. All right. You may not do it for the country. You may not do it for the university. All right. But you'll probably do it for those 4 or 5 people in your immediate vicinity, whether it's family, friends, or colleagues. You'll do it for them. Connection. There's strength in that. Now, part of the point of this in terms of connection is that even in the Surgeon General model, and there are many models of organizational well-being, you see connection and community right there in that blue circle as huge. Also, for those of you who aren't psychiatrists, all of this protection from harm, opportunity for growth, mattering at work, work-life harmony, these are just Ericksonian stages of development, if those of you who didn't know. For Griff and I, this is like, well, of course. But that's actually what it is. When you're looking at all of these things, you are looking at supporting people's basic human needs through connection and them seeing it. Now, Let me pause. I told you that if you're not practicing hope, something comes to fill the space. Helplessness, hopelessness. And the words I choose right now are my own. Hate. In this particular case, defined here as intense dislike that encourages the elimination of others, involves dehumanization or the denial of human qualities to others. There are many theories of hate, but the common thing is the them, the other. You're not us, all right? Interestingly enough, with the ubiquity of hate, you'd think there'd be a bevy of research on it, like our neuroscientists are just diving to get into it. No. Small. Hope research is actually only 30 years old. Interesting, They have started to associate it with different areas of the brain, the inferior frontal cortex, but I don't want you to get so caught up in the neuroanatomy of it because there's still more work that needs to be done. But they're looking at mechanisms for hate. Then, neuroimaging studies of hate and empathy. The same area of the brains are activated when people experience their own emotions and they observe such emotions in others. Sharing emotional states with others is thus an important aspect of emphasizing. They talk about the anterior cingulate cortex as well as the somatosensory cortex. In other words, depending on what functional MRI study you look at, you can map this. Hate. They looked at people with aggression, and they saw that they had, if you will, again, reduced activity in the temporal regions of the brain and the reduced activity in the occipital regions. And then hate speech and empathy. Exposure to hate speech can desensitize people to the pain of others, which can affect intergroup relations. However, empathy-inducing interventions can help people become more sensitive to hate speech again. All right, so I gotta break this down for you because it goes back to something one of my attendees taught me. The most gross form of psychotherapy is psychopharmacology. The subtlest form of psychopharmacology is psychotherapy. All right, what does that mean? It means neuronal change happens no matter what. I could care less how you get it done. All right, whether it is through a med, whether it's through ECT, whether it's through TMS, or whether it's through words, your brain is constantly changing. All right, when people are exposed to hate speech, you are actually affecting neuronal change, which but it needs to be said that way. Interventions can actually make you a bit more empathic, all right? So those interventions, because then you stop viewing people as other, you stop viewing them as this, that, or the other. And by the way, this is a message, and these are my own words, for all of us. This is a message for all of us. This is a message for when we're in our kitchens or we're X, Y, or Z, and you find yourself just in a real good, you got a good curse going on or something like that. You know, that's okay. You're in a safe space. It's all good. It's all good. It's all right. Breathe, just like we talked on. Even mild, even jokes, even light. Am I separating myself from the rest of humanity? Am I not connecting anymore, which is part of our mission here? Is the joke, is the kind of adrenaline rush from being negative and angry worth it? You need to decide. If I make the decision for you, that's not hope. See how that works? That's not hope. I can show it to you. Hope is you intentionally making the decision, you taking the action, despite the difficulty, despite the adversity. That is hope. Now, so when we talk about foundations of resilient organization, we're going to talk about action plus empathic connection. But I'm going to go back to the slide one time. Oh, I'm over, but that's okay. I'll move quickly. Well, before we get here, we'll leave here. When you're thinking about this, remember I told you the two questions. Because you're at this lecture, because this isn't the Lorenzo Norris lecture, this is the Frank Miller lecture. You may wish to ask yourself one pivotal question. What would Dr. Dean Miller do in this situation when confronted with this? Dean Miller was a dean from 1966 to 73. He took over as a dean 3 years after John F. Kennedy was assassinated. In the 2 years after he was dean, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, and then followed by RFK. in the midst of the Vietnam War, which was then followed by the Kent State Massacre. What did Dean Miller do? This is who you are. This is in your DNA. This is the Miller Lecture. This is who Dean Miller is. What did he do? He got to work. He increased our enrollment of women. He said, no, this is, which is correct, the future. He invested in education and connecting. He did not stop. He did not let the challenges of the times stop him from saying, this is GW. It wouldn't have been 200 years at that point in time, but it had been a while. This is who we are, and I will continue to progress with everyone. And when you read, all the stories are of the connection. And they have to be. Because how the heck do you get a Golden Apple Award? Be the first, they invented it for you. Ask yourself. I encourage you at the Miller Lecture, ask yourself just one question. What would Miller do? What did he do? And is that in my DNA? Because I'm GW. Perhaps it is. So Dean Miller, you know, he stopped in 77, all right, being a dean, but then, or no, he stopped in, I want to say 73, then he was chair of pathology for 74, 77, all right, and then he retired in 1985, and I was so happy for him. I mean, look how far he got us. I mean, he got us through Vietnam, I mean, you know, all kinds of good stuff, like, you know, Thriller, Bad, all kind of disco, like all of that. I mean, the man deserved to retire, all right, but he didn't leave, he just kind of stopped, all right, just chilled for a moment. He retired in 85. So I'm like, okay, whoa, that's an interesting number. Just out of curiosity, do we have anybody from 84 or 85 grads here? Thank you. All right, and I'll get to that in a moment. 85. Now we're getting to the Resiliency and Wellbeing Center. The Resiliency and Wellbeing Center was started in the heart of COVID, all right, with the idea, and this is our mission statement, all right, which was composed and orchestrated by Dr. Lee Frame. GW Resiliency and Wellbeing Center supports individual, departmental, institutional level purpose, which is the foundation of whole person health, to support the meaningful contribution to all employees, trainings at GW. And we do this at all levels of care. But like anything, okay, yes, I practice hope, but as I told you, I'm from Cleveland. So where is the money coming from this? Where did it come from? It came from the class of 85. It came from the class of 85. And I was like, wait a minute, the class of 85? I'm like, okay, 85, great year, in my opinion. We are the world, yes. Now you should look at the documentary on Netflix. Nintendo, yes. New Coke, maybe not so good. Okay. 85, the first Air Jordan. That's right, there you go. They were in the HIV epidemic. Whoa, they were in the HIV epidemic. They went through what we're going through. They came out of that, wait, they were in the HIV epidemic? They had enough to actually set up a legacy fund that's benefiting us now? And they had Air Jordans back in the day? This is awesome. We're gonna win. Again, connection and meaning. I want to thank the class of 1985 in regards to everything, as well as the class of 1984, anybody who's like, you know, there can be a blurring of the boundaries, but definitely the class of 1985, as well as Dean Deaton isn't here, but everything that group did. All right, so this is the Resiliency and Wellbeing Center. All right, now, this is the staff of the Resiliency and Wellbeing Center, all right, myself, Dr. Lee Frame, Janet Rodriguez, our communication specialist, Ashley Drapeau, our PA, and Victoria Karacheva, our master level psychotherapist or whatnot. There used to be a joke when I first got here doing it. They're like, you know, Lorenzo, you are a band of one. That was used to my pitch line. Hey, I'm Lorenzo, come talk to me. You can imagine how well that went. And then probably the best day, one of the best days of my life, Dr. Lee Frame came and she said, yes, I'm willing to be a part of this and help. I was like, oh, thank you. A researcher, somebody who knows the science more than I do. All right, so Lee Frame, thank you so much, Dr. Frame. So this is what we do. We work on the individual level. We work with departments. We work with groups. We have, if you will, education. We actually have our own clinic in which we treat people free of charge. Thank you, Dean Bass. All right, for brief psychotherapy. All right, in different modalities. Any member of the GW Medical Enterprise. This is our motto, the whole health wheel. Purpose is at the center of it: prevention, natural movement, environment, nutrition, recharge, support, and belonging. It's this all evidence-based, and if you want to hear more, go talk to Dr. Lee Frame or listen to one of her podcasts, or better yet, go to our website. These are some of the things that we do, just as an example, in terms of the education on restorative sleep. And one of the things that I'm very, very, very proud of is our women's well-being champion and initiative. One of the things that I actually was very interested in was having more of a focus on women's well-being. And we want to thank the generous gift of Dr. Rosemary Bowes, who started this. And so this is one of the things in terms of the lecture series that I'm most pleased with. And we've got a lot of things, even limit setting intentions for the holidays. So yeah, exactly. So the Resiliency and Wellbeing Center came out of this. And this is an example of action and empathic connection working together. But let's do more. Okay? This is, as talented as I am, this is like the dog therapy. And I have like absolutely zero on the dogs, zero. All right, when the dogs come, they just kick me out. And I think some of these are surgical residents, so you know it works. So, yeah, no, seriously, no, the surgery residents love the dogs. I mean, it's just like, not so much a fan of like sometimes me, but the dogs come, no, I'm just joking, but not that much. But they love the dogs. I mean, look at those faces. I mean, all right, so next. Okay, again, we do other things, and I know yoga gets a bad rap, and so does the sound therapy, and this is them in one of our excellent GW facilities. I think this was like a light exhibit where they let us do the relaxation. I know everybody's thinking like, oh, gosh, you gotta be kidding me. And then you do it and you're like, oh wow, this really does work, okay? And now one of the most important things with the Resiliency and Wellbeing Center, we recently had our opt-out appointments for all of our interns. In other words, you're automatically set up for an appointment. All right, with the Resiliency and Wellbeing Center. And knowing how busy people were, I was expecting like maybe a 10 or 15% uptake. I was not looking forward to giving that report to Barbara. Not at all, because she'd be like, Lorenzo, 60% of all residents kept the appointment. 20% of them made another appointment. And the 40% that didn't are asking, why can't they come back? Our findings are similar to other centers that have set this up. Different generation, different connection, they get it. They get it. They get it. Don't give them a hard time, they get it. Give them resources, help them connect. All right, next. Okay, so we've reached to different people in terms of the Resiliency and Wellbeing Center, GW Law, Fannie Mae, Federal Judicial System, Milken Institute of Health, all of that kind of stuff. But we are GW, and we gotta do more again. These are some of the things in terms of medicine. These are just a few of the highlights. GW, University Board of Trustees established plan to establish the GW Medical Faculty Associates, 2000. 2002, the new GW Hospital opens. All right, 2004, the Medical Faculty Associates becomes first medical group in the region to launch electronic medical records. Again, medicine, all right, education, all right, 2006, all right, Dr. Mortasagi becomes the first Asian American to serve as the U.S. Surgeon General. 2013, Dean Smooth Jeffrey Ackman becomes the first and only openly gay man to hold office. 2014, we opened the Class Center, the expanded learning system. And then 2020, GW appoints Barbara Bass, all right, Vice President for Health Affairs and Dean, making her the first female Vice President and Dean. Education, we do our thing. Next, Discovery, Dr. Gary Simon, all right, this first case of AIDS in the District of Columbia. 2008, I don't know if we have any members of the Katzen family here. GW sees a $10 million gift from the Katzen family to establish the GW Katzen's Cancer Research Center, which became the seed of our current cancer center. And then 2020, GW's on the front lines of the fight against COVID-19 pandemic, and it's selected as one of 90 sites to participate in the clinical trials. But we're not done with the medicine, education, or discovery. We keep on moving. We got Dean Nesbitt here. Yes, we are going to be opening up another campus, the Cedar Hill Medical Campus, which will be opening up in 2025. If you want to hear more about that, Dean Nesbitt is right here. All right, so and she's going to give the transformative talk. I know she. So we've got that. Next, we've got a regional medical campus at Life Bridge. We are expanding our educational focus. This is up and running, and we have there our inaugural class, and that's Dr. Lucas. I don't know if we got Dr. Krugman or Dr. Dean Sharps in there, but this is our inaugural class there, and they're actually going through the match right now, and I'm going to be very, very excited to see their outcomes. All right, and then finally, all right, the GW Cancer Center. I hope if you don't get an opportunity to look at that lecture. It was one of the most powerful lectures. And again, their mission, led by Dr. Bauman, is to drive transformational research, personalized family-centered care, and cancer policy in the nation's capital. So All of this, starting 200 years ago, going with Dr. Miller, class of 85 and more. This is who we are. We're GW Medicine. Medicine, education, discovery. When we do all of this together, we're not just hope and humanism. We are not just action and connection. We are hope and humanism manifest. And when people walk on this campus, they will feel just how I felt. They will not know why they feel it. They will not have an idea. They will just say, I feel something. I need to stay here. I need to get treated here. I need to get educated here. I need to be part of this discovery. This is who we are. And we can choose, as we always have been, to be our best in the face of adversity. So with that being said, I thank you all so very much. Letting me go over time. This is the Hope and Humanism lecture. This is done with the spirit of Dr. Miller in mind. I hope you all take that with you on your journeys. I hope you all realize the power that you all have. I hope you all realize hope is action and humanism is connection. I see many familiar faces. I hope you continue to do that, as I know you will. Thank you so very much.